And now we're going to receive a presentation from Caltrain Joint Powers Board on the final design of improvements along First Avenue on the east side of the grade separation structure.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight I will be presenting specifically on the final design of the improvements on the east side, including the parking that we discussed last time and some of the additional features we've been working with the city. So real quickly, update on the street parking at First Avenue. Last time we presented, this is a conceptual design. I have to check with my designers. I'm back to present a final carved in stone variant of that. And then east side improvements, including some of the planting improvements. During a September outreach meeting, there were some questions that came out from the community regarding parking along First Avenue. I then presented to the council, and some of those concerns were reiterated. So we went back to our design team and came up.
That was very nicely put.
I wasn't sure which way I was going to go with that, but so we went back to the design team and we spoke with city staff and sort of put our heads together to see what we could do to capture back some of the parking along First Ave. Presented in September a tentative plan, but my designers were still hedging their bets on checking some last minute stuff, which they've now done, and so I'm here to present the final design to you tonight. So just to be clear, the area we're talking about is along First Avenue. There's Melody Toyota right off on the corner here. And the new Caltrain station will be going off in this portion to the top right of the figure. So the area in question that was in conflict that accounted for most of the loss of parking along First Avenue was due to this bulb out in the sidewalk. So the current curb line along First Avenue is doing this, and the contract plans currently call for the sidewalk to be recessed, the road to be narrowed, and for us to lose a little bit of that width. The reason has to do with, there's a staircase here and a ramp which you can't quite see, and as you recall, all of that was sized for 4 tracks at one point. So again, the thought was 4 tracks plus staircase plus ramp plus parking plus street just didn't work. And so the thing we cut out was the parking. Well, now 2013, we're not looking at 4 tracks anytime in the near future. So we went back and revisited it, and what we discovered is that we can actually push this curb line back and recapture some of that parking. So what it looks like is, this is the cul-de-sac up by Melody Toyota. These are the 18 spots that we mentioned last time that we were looking to recapture and add, and now I can definitively say that we're able to do that. So essentially, the curb line currently, as I showed, bulbed out in this area. It now will be flattened out to match almost exactly the same line as it extends up to Pine Street. And I'll go through some of those cross sections in more detail. So essentially, parking is saved up along First Ave. However, we still do lose spots where the bulb out is, as well as 1 spot each at the crosswalk. And then there's a couple extra here where First Avenue no longer exists, where it used to merge into San Mateo. And now just some of the improvements that we've developed for the east side. So again, this was a consequence of looking at this originally as a 2-track, 4-track variant design. And so this was an element that we didn't really focus on a lot when we were in 2009 in the design frame. But the idea was always that if we went with 2 tracks, that we would go back, we would talk with the city, and come up with a design that fit the city's needs along First Avenue. And here it is. So I've broken it down into 3 main elements. There's some enhanced planting that we've done at the Transit Center. There's the water feature at Posey Park, which I'm shamelessly inserting here, even though it's on the west side. And then there's the additional improvements along First Avenue itself, which are the sidewalk, the terraced planting, and some of the customized planting that we were able to work out with the city staff. So in order, first we have the planting along the Transit Center. So this is the area at San Bruno and San Mateo, at that quadrant up by where you now see the new east elevator going in. So up in the corner right there, That's the elevator tower that you see going up. The first lift has been poured. So what we did is we took a look at the area around this elevator as it transitions into the station, and we came up with a terraced planning sequence to sort of, again, break a little bit of the starkness of having this tall elevator tower and sort of terrace down. So here's a front view of it as it would appear from San Bruno. So as you're walking along San Bruno, the grade drops as you go into the underpass. Here's the elevator shown in gray, and here would be the staircase that would take you up to the platform level. Here, as promised, is the water feature at Posey Park. So this is a shot, this is a little bit of an aerial shot, but essentially this would be the new paving that will be going in starting end of next week in Posey Park. And the water feature, this is the ramp on this side and the staircase coming up to the station along here. Another shot of that showing the cascading effect of the water as it sort of slides down into those main pools, and then also the secondary cascading effect through these weirs here. So finally, these are the planting improvements that were worked out with the city along the east side, primarily on First Avenue, but up Angus as well as all the way up to San Mateo. So some of the main elements that were incorporated were additional and different kinds of street trees, improved planting. More specifically, the biggest change was the introduction of this terrace effect, so it sort of breaks the wall down rather than go wall straight to vertical planting. We've introduced this terrace element, and then the improved and widened sidewalks, which I will show you. So just generally, this is sort of what I mean by a terraced planter. So this is First Avenue. This is actually Artichoke Joe's parking, and obviously that's the grade sub. So what we have is various configurations, but they all equal some variant of sidewalk, street trees, planting strip, retaining wall, and planter with additional landscaping sort of flowing up into the retaining wall so that along First Avenue, rather than see the full height of the wall, what you in fact see is sort of a diminished vertical element there. So I'm going to break this into two main components, and that is north of Pine and south of Pine. And the reason I do it like this is because the order of those elements I described varies depending which side of Pine you're on. So north of Pine, what you have is you have a sidewalk immediately up against the curb line. Then you've got a planting strip that in this case includes street trees. Then you have this 3-foot wall followed by this sloped terrace with the planting. South of Pine, the order is reversed. It goes curb, street trees, 6-foot sidewalk, followed by a planter strip, followed by a 3-foot wall, followed by this 20-foot planter element. So the planter element, the terracing, doesn't really vary in width. It varies slightly, and I'll show you the two areas where it tapers. But in general, except the areas I'm about to show you, it's 20 feet. The sidewalk is, again, it widens at the crosswalks, but generally it's 6 feet. So a fairly wide sidewalk, and then the planter strip varies depending whether you're north or south. So you end up with a larger tree well section along the curb south of Pine with this 3-foot planter strip, and north of Pine, those two elements get combined into one wider planter strip, but also with the street trees. So the two areas I mentioned where what I just showed you is not correct are at Pine Street itself, where the sidewalk gets significantly wider. And this is because there is an ADA crossing at that location. So the sidewalk actually has to have a landing for the ramp. So just at the area at Pine, the sidewalk gets wider, and then it reverts to one of those two conditions I just showed you. And then the final area is at Angus itself, where the wall sort of returns and closes in on the grade step. So it is actually a 3D element. It doesn't just taper off. It returns and then ties into this wall, which is the edge of the grade step itself. So there's a visual of what it will look like. One element I just wanted to point out is the planting itself, the wall itself. Last time there was some confusion and caused by me because I showed two pictures, one with a nice smooth finish and one with a ashlar finish. In reaction to the concern over graffiti abatement, our designers have determined that the ashlar finish makes the most sense. It tends to discourage graffiti a little bit more than the smooth finish, and it also aesthetically works better because it fits exactly with what we're doing at the grade step itself. The pattern, and actually this one, the color isn't exactly correct, but the color will match the current grade step. So there'll be a little bit more continuity between the 3-foot wall and the full grade step itself. And then the final element that we worked closely with the city on was to customize the planting to fit exactly to the city of San Bruno specifications as to drought tolerant and plants that thrive in San Bruno's environment. So don't expect you to read every one of these, but I guess the gist of this slide is that we did work with the city. We did ensure that we tailor-made the planting to fit the city's needs, and we've provided an aesthetically pleasing, customized approach with some sort of curvilinear patterns so that the planting doesn't look like sort of a blocky kind of texture to it, but rather it sort of flows. And that section you see here, that black line, that's actually the wall. So one of the things we endeavor to do is to sort of merge the planting on both sides of the wall so there's a little bit of a feel of continuation so that some of the curvilinear patterns extend to both sides of the wall. And I'll take any questions anyone might have at this time.
Any questions? Ken?
Can you refresh our memory on what you came to us with in September? The negative, the amount of parking spaces that were removed, and so now we're still losing some.
We are, correct. So at First Avenue, which is the area I was just talking about, we were, which I think I have. So we had a net loss of 31 parking spaces. We're able to bring back 18 of those spots. However, there is still a net loss at First Avenue. And where that is it's the two I mentioned where the pedestrian crosswalk is. And then the rest of the loss are all because of this cul-de-sac and because there's no longer a cemetery there anymore. So unfortunately, we do still lose 13 spots, but we lose 13 spots on a street that isn't there anymore, associated with the area to the extreme north at Melanie Toyota, which generally is not where the highest parking demand is. The highest parking demand is
in the residences,
along the residential area,
Okay, thank you.
Irene?
I'm asking these questions to clarify what I understand. So I was there this evening on First Avenue and took some pictures, and I think a lot of the confusion that I had, besides the fact that originally you said we were going to lose all the parking on First on the east side, is that the pictures that, to me, that we had been looking at City Hall that were over there and that you reproduced on the presentation, it seemed as though the street itself would be wider and that the widening of it would accommodate the parking. But from what I saw and what I'm looking at and what I'm listening to, that's not what is happening. Is that correct?
That is correct. So First Avenue in general, First Avenue remains in the after condition the same width as it is today. It will have, in the after condition, it will have a sidewalk on the west side that it doesn't currently have. It'll have new curb, it'll have improved crossings, etc. But in general, the width that you see there today with the curb line is the width in the after condition. Now I say in general because everything I just said is not, as you recall, true at the north end of First Avenue. So what was happening was not so much that we were widening it on the south side, it was that we were narrowing it on the north side. And this was a consequence of sort of the 2-track, 4-track thing. But this, I call it a bulb out, but this sort of reduction in width that you see here in this slide, that actually was a constriction of what you see there today. So if you were to drive out there today, the curb line actually follows where my cursor is along this line. What we're essentially doing is returning it back to essentially the existing. It gets nominally wider in this area, but in general, it's approximately the same width.
Okay.
if that answers your question.
It does answer my question, but it brings up another question. It's a very narrow street. I know all the streets are narrow. I grew up down there.
Right.
I drive down there almost every day. Is there a reason that we can't make, or you, make the sidewalk not 6 feet, make it 4 feet, and just move it over 2 feet so we just have a little breathing room on the street? Or is that because that's Caltrain's right of way and that's yours and not ours? Or is because it's a done deal?
Right. So we didn't talk about right-of-way, and I probably should have mentioned that on this slide, but the right-of-way line is actually, that was one of the other reasons why this curb line got pushed in. It's because the JPB right-of-way line is actually roughly at the edge of the existing curb line. So to answer your question, yes, that is one of the main reasons, is that the width of the street today is essentially the width of the city's easement to use the street. So that was the main reason. There's some other trickle-on effects. If you make the street wider, it sort of pushes everything down the road. Not insurmountable ones, like you mentioned. You could do something like narrow the sidewalk. That would be one way you could do it. But the primary reason had to do with ownership and right-of-way issues.
Okay. Is it a big issue for you guys? Is it too late in the game to say anything? Is it?
So we are, in order to make this work, this portion would involve some sort of agreement between the JPB and the city of San Bruno to make this happen. So we would already have to sort of work together collaboratively to come up with a way to basically administratively allow for the JPB to maintain ownership, but the parking to be pushed into that area. Further up, I don't see there's no strong engineering reason. I mean, some of that curb line's already been poured, obviously, so that's one concern. But that is something we can look at, if that's a major concern. I mean,
it's not a major concern per se. I just think it's an opportunity. You haven't done part of it yet. It's an opportunity to make that place a little better and a little easier to drive down. A lot of people I know go down Angus. They avoid San Bruno Avenue and they go down Angus and turn left on First Avenue to go to avoid a lot of the traffic and all those things that are happening over there.
So I mean, in general, what I said is correct, but when you start, I mean, the devil is always in the details, and some of these points are carved in stone. So, for instance, up by Angus, there's areas where we don't really have much choice over the width. So my guess is, I mean, I could certainly have my designer look at it. My guess is when we started to delve down further, what would likely happen is we could, from an engineering point of view, say, yeah, we can widen it here, but not here, here, but not here. And my concern is, it's sort of a point of diminishing return, right? You have a street that's doing this. It's one thing to do that to accommodate parking, because you can have localized parking. But as far as through traffic, I'm not sure how much benefit. But that's certainly something we can look at. See if there's any opportunity there.
I would like it. Unless it delays something astronomically, if you guys sit down and pencil it out tomorrow or whatever.
No,
I don't know if anyone else does. But.
Are you referring? Can I interrupt? Yeah. Are you referring mainly to Angus to Pine Street?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because from Pine to the dead end.
Right.
Oh yeah, but that first section, people go down Angus, they turn right on Pine, they go.
And that's the transition area too. That's where the right-of-way does change.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. So we can certainly look at it, and again, I'll speak for the contractor and say that this is not going to be driving the schedule for the whole project. But my concern again is, if we start down that road and it turns out that there's certain hard points that define that width, that might kind of paint us into a corner. That's my major concern.
Okay.
But we'll certainly look at that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Good. Anything else? Rico?
And I appreciate the presentation. Some things that had come up from that September meeting, in addition, when I was out and about these last couple of months, is again the lighting. There was concern about the ramp and it being utilized as more of a, shall we say, a skateboard ramp.
Right.
I know we talked about that before, so I was just wondering if those couple items too. That's a couple questions I had last month.
Thanks for that. So on the ramp, I'm still working with my designers. They've come up with some conceptual ideas. What I basically asked them to do is what have other people done? What have other locations come up with? So they're looking at various types of essentially like sort of rumble strip type of thing, and then there's clips you can put on. We want to look at all those, but we also got to look at them against ADA compliance to make sure that the ramp still serves as a ramp. So that was an important comment that came out of the community meeting. We are looking at that. I don't have a final answer for you, but I will definitely keep pushing my designers to come up with something that suits that. As to the lighting, we did a sort of high-level, more theoretical type of study of the lighting in that area just to confirm that it meets acceptable standards. It does meet acceptable standards. That being said, we want to go out and do an actual field sample because doing a theoretical model will only judge whether a perfect light, given a perfect, maintenance record, shines correctly, right? I mean, the actuality of going out there with a light meter may yield separate results, so we're going to do that next. In general, I would say it appears that the lighting along First Avenue does meet standards. What I suspect that we're looking at is that for years, First Avenue was getting all kinds of free lighting from your neighbors at Artichoke Joe's, and now that it's been taken away by some guy building a grade set, I think there's a little bit of a, hey, you made it worse or you made it darker. So we want to take those concerns seriously because it's a safety thing. I mean, you can't have dark pockets, so it's not enough to just take an average over a whole street and say it meets requirements. We want to make sure there's no, dead areas there where we're, creating a safety hazard that didn't exist there before. So, short answer to the question, which I guess I could have started with, is we're still working on it, and we'll get back to you. We've got to finalize.
And so you'll keep us updated?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, anything else? Thank you very much.